You're invited to join Abundant by Nature, a summer activation to rewire your programming, elevate your abundance frequency, and receive from your true nature of abundance and overflow. This is going to be a fun, easy, and very accessible 3-month group program with me guiding you live, also giving you coaching rooted in transformational neurolinguistic programming so you can clear the unconscious blocks to receiving, to your worthiness, to anything you want in life. Heal any wounds around money, any deep programming around the guilt and shame when it comes to being spiritual and being of service, and also receiving. This program has been coming through me for a few years now, and I'm so excited to finally bring this to you. As I said, it's going to be fun. We're going to do a lot of really just exciting, easy practices that you can integrate into your life forever. Embodiment practices, voice work, and also working with plant spirits and plant medicines, including in ceremony and ritual. Don't worry, there are no psychedelics required. But I really encourage you to take a look here at the webpage and sign up. The doors are open now. We start in June. And as I said, this is a live program guided by me inside of a community container. I made it really accessible, and I'm going to make it lots of fun for all of us. So I hope to see you there. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Medicine for These Times. I'm here with my friend Natasja Pelgrom. Hi, Natasha. Thanks for being with us again.
Hi, Beth. So amazing to be here. And hi to the audience. Those of you already know me. Thank you for tuning in again. And for those of don't know me yet, hi.
Here we go. Yeah, I've had you on here, I think, gosh, 2 or 3 years ago. I forgot now. But I've interviewed
A little bit
you
longer
a bunch of
ago,
times.
actually.
Yeah, was it? It was like really beginning, right?
It was, I
21
think,
maybe?
21. Yeah, to be honest, yes.
How time flies. Well, for those that don't know Natasha, she's an amazing leader in the psychedelic space, a space holder. She runs retreats and actually has an upcoming training program that we will be sharing about in this episode. So keep listening. But Natasha, let's talk a little bit about your story. Just a little. I know it's like people who've heard it have heard it before. But how did you get on this path to, being a psychedelic leader, working in this space, running retreats? You've worked for some of these kind of big psychedelic companies out there. I guess, is that the right word? We call them companies. Oh, it's so weird. But yeah, what was your journey here?
Yes. It's been a very interesting journey, of course. Like any of these, this is such a niche in itself and such a new kind of exploration of bringing, this into, indeed, like you said, into ventures and companies and leadership and all of that. It's fairly new, that frame. But I always want to credit the one who was really courageous in stepping in was Natasha of 14 years old. Because that was my very first psilocybin experience. I'm half Dutch, half Portuguese, and I grew up in different countries. But at the time, I was in the Netherlands, and mushrooms were at the time legal. Now it's truffles, which is the root, the mycelium root that is you're able to work with in the Netherlands. But mushrooms were fully legal. I bought them in a smart shop. I took them with my ex-boyfriend. We walked around town. And then it kicked in, and my smart ass said, gotta go home. This is pretty intense. But why I'm crediting her is because the choices she made right after that first experience are the choices that catapulted me in who I am today. And you only know that in real retrospect. When you're really eagle eye view, you really realize this is where I was. This is what happened. So in the months after that experience, which I had some really beautiful gems in the experience itself, but it wasn't intentional, ceremonial, it was recreational, it was out of curiosity, and this was in the 90s, so mushrooms, LSD, weed, all of it was on our path in a different way, right? So, but in the months after, it created within me a kind of curiosity and certain life questions that put me in a path to go into discovery and self-discovery. And So I had a really deep spiritual awakening through just an unfolding of events right after. And I started looking into shamanism, Buddhism, meditation, esoteric practices, coaching. And from that age onwards, it just never stopped. So I have to credit our very first intelligence on this planet, which are the mushrooms, in that way. And I really believe that that was something happened within me neurologically, connectively, all of the things. I was already quite online, which what I mean with that is sensitive and aware, and already had a lot of kind of maturity due by the way that I grew up and experiences I had leading up to that. But yeah, so that's, let's say, the spark of inspiration in your question, and I think is important to always name. I also want to name that my mom knew about this. So I want to put always a disclaimer in that adults were present. I'm not vouching for for people underage to just go and then suddenly they have this awakening. But this was unique to me, and this was a different time. But my mom and I had a very, still have very open relationship, and she always said to me, Natasha, I know you're going to do everything you want to do, so I might as well help you along the way. So if you have any questions, don't go outside the house, but be here. It's just a different upbringing than some cultures are, acquaintance to, or how you say that, used to. So even my Portuguese family would not know any of this. So just sharing at the time, very conservative. So it's pretty black and white. But going fast forward to more now is along the way I educated myself in different fields, but my big passion has always been to create a platform or a space to elevate other people. So I've been an entrepreneur in the fashion, hospitality, and events industry. I've had my own multiple companies. I've been successful in a way, whatever success may mean financially, but also in terms of, the success of validation of that the product was actually serving people. And I'm in my heart, I'm still like an it girl, the dancing and all of that and partying, and that was part of my 20s. I'm beginning 30s. I'm now 45. And when I was owning my own club, nightlife, bar, art gallery, shop, all of this was in one big building in the city center of Amsterdam. At some point I realized that I was getting way too high on my own supply. And I think if I share this, people will get what I mean with that. And I also realized that I was really derailed from a purpose and meaning, like even if that was to do with creating a platform for rising talents. It was called the House of Rising. I was still selling beer at the end of the day. And I wasn't out of the closet with my belief systems, let alone my spiritual practices, shamanic practices, even within my relationships, my partners, I would not fully dare to share everything about myself. So one moment I realized I need to step away. So I basically, in a few months' time, I stepped away, gave in the key, and decided I'm never going to hide the totality of who I am. And that was 13 years ago, and quite quickly after, because, from 14 to 33, I've always been educating myself. Like I said, coaching, shamanism. I've always been on a path of curiosity and purpose and meaning and trying to figure out why do we do the things we do. So when 13 years ago I stepped away, it was fairly, quote unquote, easy to step into where I am today because I have already educated so much. So it was a matter of daring myself to just do it in my living room and just go for it. So that's a little bit how I started. And then psychedelics were not on my calling list. I did not have, Beth, I'm not one of the people that was laying on a bed and Mother Ayahuasca said anything. There were a lot of things said and a lot of shadow was shown and a lot of pain and all these things, but I've never felt a calling to serve any compound or any medicines until I was almost like pushed into it, interesting enough, by just life events. And my first training into it, I didn't know that it was a training, was I was getting more and more people coming out of challenges with either LSD, DMT, or ayahuasca, and they didn't have a place to go. So this is about a decade ago. Because integration, the term integration, I think maybe 3 people were speaking on it online, maps a little bit at the time.
No one. Very few.
Exactly. So you know, and somehow people were coming on my path that needed that support. So I was figuring out along the way how to support them, and suddenly this became a real thing. So my training started by understanding the complexity energetically, psychologically, and metaphorically, if you start to unpack what was happening with people. And then I started having an inside view on what is good facilitation and what is quote unquote bad facilitation. So I started to gather a lot of data and a lot of opinions that psychedelics should not be done by many people. So with that opinion, I got catapulted through a friend into 5-MeO DMT experience. And a very long story short, the first moment I took that compound, I knew I'd come home, and there was just no way back, and there was not even a choice in that sense. It was just all the alignment throughout my whole life. It just led all to almost everything I had trained upon since my 14 all came together, and I was like, oh wait, I get it now. And so yeah, and more details to that. And of course, psilocybin, you know, truffles is part of my heritage here in the Netherlands, so that's always part of the work that I do as well. And 5-MeO is my big love, together with tobacco, mapacho. So those are my 2 loves in terms of the medicines. So that's, I try to keep it short, but still give a bit of a news story to your audience if they've already heard from me. So yeah.
I love it. There were new parts that I haven't heard, so thank you. You know, it's really funny that you mentioned the teenage journey. Mine was also 14 years old, but I recently, just like 2 days ago, so I have a teenage nephew who, I shouldn't be saying this publicly, but the chances of him listening are like 1 in a million. No one knows who he is, so no one listening. You know, because it was kind of this like shame, you know, there's like a shame story with it. Well, anyways, my whole family knew, you know, that I'm doing work in this realm, and I kept saying, I was like, you know, they're gonna do these on their own anyway. So if and when you're ready, you know, why don't I set up like an intentional journey with the mushrooms? And the parents, my brother and his now ex-wife, were like, no, you know, like even though they're very open-minded and they've done them themselves, they're just like, what? No, you know, maybe when they're 18 or 21 or older. So my nephew, about a year ago, or maybe it was a little over a year ago, I don't know the details of the story. I know bits and pieces of it, but a long story short, ended up taking mushrooms for the first time through a chocolate bar. And, you know, I'm like, why didn't you call me first? But, you know, divine timing. Teenagers who don't really understand dosage and don't understand what was in these chocolate bars, and, you know, they didn't get it from anyone they knew. He ended up taking like a quite large dose. Like there were like rumors about how much it really was, but I talked to him recently, and it ends up being it was like 7 or 8 grams for his first time. I know. But it's interesting because I had kind of a similar story when I was a teenager. I took acid for the first time, and I didn't really know what I was doing and didn't know what I was getting into. And I spent the entire journey by myself at home, like laying in bed because it was nighttime and I couldn't wake anyone up. And I didn't know. I just kind of knew a little bit and I was curious. But looking back, I feel like it was one of the best things that's ever happened to me. And what's weird is, you know, there were a lot of like issues with the journey my nephew had, but he has been different ever since, and for the better. And he even said something to me just a few weeks ago about, well, I broke through. That's the only language he could use. And I tried to talk to him about, like, you know, the 5 gram, and I think by now he's learned a fair amount of this, but I always wonder, I'm like, I think he's going to look back on this experience, even though it was highly challenging, and probably say it was one of the best things that happened, you know?
So it is funny when you mention like teenagers and intentional and don't go doing this at home, but part of me is like, I don't know, maybe there is something really positive about it if we can approach working with teenagers in an intentional, safe environment. Like, what if that was held in a very safe space with adults in the other room? Probably would have been a better experience.
I think one of the reasons that I think 14 was also that moment in calling. I think there is a threshold of initiation in different ages, right? And I think that is a natural threshold where you go on your first vision quest.
Yeah.
So I think, intuitively we have taken all of these rituals and rites of passages out of our society, but it's still embedded into our bodies and into our psyche, the craving for the ego death. And especially when it comes from, a childhood into adolescent, that place, and then even going into a place of union, of serving the container of your community. And that's different than for those who are born in a female body and those who are born in a male body, in a way, right? So we've stripped all of that away. It's just a 24-hour cycle of the same thing. We don't even do a ritual when we change jobs, let alone seasons. It's just one thing after another. So I think we're going a little bit broader off topic, but I think a lot of the challenges in teenagers right now. Now, I'm not a parent, so I can't speak from the first person, but what I see from parents who are clients of mine and friends is that the challenges is a lot of the things that are happening right now are very new. We don't have any experience with that really. And it's stripped away from its rooting relationship to the earth in the practices and how we relate. And for me, even to be in, for example, an example in Portugal on Sunday, although it's Catholic and you might not have anything with religion in that way, on Sunday, shops are still closed and you can just feel a city coming to rest. Right? And it's like these kind of things in society, they matter. They're having impact, let alone our access to our phone, on too much information. Our brain cannot process. We were not made to know more than our own village, let alone a different country. Right, for our survival. So it's a bit off topic, but I do feel that the craving for these things, and of course, when we look at it from this lens of therapeutic work and clinical work and ethical work, underage, should you be able to do that, and all of these things. But if you look at the societies that people are initiated and brought in, how many mothers with their babies are in ceremony? Right? So, yeah. I don't have the answers. I'm just recognizing the patterns. I'm not pretending.
It's good to talk about because it's an interesting topic, and I'm like, I kind of want someone else to go out there and start talking about like, microdosing for teenagers or teenage journeys, and I think no one's going to take on that risk, but there is something to it where it's like the reality is, and at least here in the Western world, teenagers are going to do it all on their own anyways, Yeah. I had one client a few years ago who her husband took their son out. I think it was for his maybe 16th birthday, somewhere not too young, and did a mushroom journey while camping. That was a rite of passage. It was like they held it in a very intentional way. And I kept trying to encourage her to like put this out there as an offering. But of course, everyone's scared to because there's stigma. There's like, I don't want to be responsible.
Let alone in the US.
I know. Even worse, right?
Yeah.
I know the European culture is definitely a little more, at least you guys are able to talk to your parents a little bit more. We all hid this until it was until my brother told on me. Beth did acid, it was like 3 years later. But anyways, on to other topics. So tell us a little bit about, I know you have this upcoming Foundations of Space Holding, and I want to talk about this. It's, and I think we've touched on this before. It's been very interesting over the years to watch this field of, I thought about this even yesterday. I was like, wow, I'm in so many of these like psychedelic communities and groups, and there's like all these ways of getting space holders and, sending people clients. And it's all done in this like very down low kind of, in my opinion, a little haphazard way of referring people out, and then people working with total strangers. And it's just, I'm like, I don't know if this is the best way. It's the world that we're in. But these days, it seems like there's like a dime a dozen psychedelic space holders. And some maybe better than others, and some more experienced than others, and some with a different level of like training and other modalities that are complementary to the space holding. But it's been a weird thing where I've even questioned my own role as someone who's maybe teaching. Like I recently taught a psilocybin program with a friend of mine. It's like, well, do we want everybody in this, or do we have our limitations? Like someone who's new but wants to start space holding. How do you feel about this? And then part of me is like, oh great, let's just get these medicines to all those who need them, no matter what it takes. So it's like this struggle of trying to figure out what the right way is or what the best way is. Do you ever think about this? Does this come up, and does it sometimes irk you? Like
all
there's
the time.
Everybody giving mushrooms right now.
I think it's everybody to themselves. It's like run. No. I mean, I think about this all the time because I think it's an inherent responsibility. If someone puts trust in your hands, I might not be responsible for them, but I am responsible for the trust that is given. Right? So there is a nuance in there. So I'm always thinking about how to be in my own integrity. What does that even mean? My integrity today was something else, and 10 years ago, to be really, and not that I wasn't in an integrity or we don't have good intentions, but that shifts too. Your belief system shift, the things you see changing. The one thing that I do know for me is like, I've personally come to a place that I'm really realizing the cliche of the more you acquire, the less you really know. Mm. And it's daunting. So I am so much more careful, and I'm so much more due diligence on so many more levels than I did 10 years ago. Like I would have not thought of those things, what I'm doing today, then.
That's funny because I've noticed that too. Because I've even questioned myself. I'm like, why am I so, like, I'm so risk averse. Like, I'm very like, I've sent people to others where I'm like, I'm not comfortable with that. But then I'm like, some new person who doesn't really know anything is like, sure, I'll help you. And I'm like, God, that's so weird. I have like, way more experience than that person, but I'm less comfortable with it,
Yeah, and I think you realize the consequences more. Sometimes it's helpful to be that teenager mentality, right? To be pioneering. So maybe there's a new group that needs to be in that teenage space, and there's a new group that goes into elderhood. Things change in that way. But yeah, so when it comes to space holding, for me, it's very clear that the qualities that you develop through the catalyst of expanded state of consciousness, right? Even with breath work at times, right? Through an expanded state, that quality, I feel that those qualities are extremely needed in our society. And to allude back to what I shared about what we're missing in our society is these qualities, because even the word leadership, I've been putting the word leadership consistently over the last few years in all of my my communications to reclaim the word, to coming it out of a corporate context. In a way, people like, and how the amount of people who say I'm not a leader, and the amount of people that are from a specific gender who say I'm not a leader, while they are, but it's really staggering. So for me personally, those pillars are needed. And psychedelics, and I feel, for example, with psilocybin, it's a very generous compound to do this with, is to cultivate these practices. Now, in my own trainings, the majority of people, because I'm super clear, the majority of people don't necessarily have ambition to serve the medicine, because what I bring, and especially my mentorship, I'm really asked the questions around: are you seeing this as a devotional practice? Are you aware how long it really takes to really be in a one-on-one setting, let alone in a group setting, right? It takes a really long time to do that. And what kind of base of experience do you have? Real experience? Do you have a minimum of, let's say, 3 years of a client-centered practice where you were trauma-informed? Do you understand the nervous system and how the body relates to it? Do you understand the transpersonal aspect of the psyche? Are you aware of archetypes? You need to know, and then are you aware of different cosmologies? Are you connected to a cosmology? Are you acknowledging that there is an energetic field? How are you going to navigate that? So when you start to ask all these questions, it becomes quite clear where there are pluses and minuses. And then you can guide people, okay, have you thought of going into maybe this skill set more over this skill set now, you know? And so that's more my personal approach with it. And then there are some standard pillars. So the fundamentals of space holding, one of the most important pillars into it, and it sounds so simple, but it's so funny because the people that studied the most 9 out of 10 times have actually the most struggle with these pillars. You know, so to me, it's always really, really funny. But can you truly create a space of non-judgment? And what do I mean with that? Do you have the capacity to go really deep with yourself? Have you literally died multiple times? You know, like in different ways. And that could be, that doesn't have to be always in a psychedelic experience. It can be heartbreak, can be loss of a loved one, death, can be different types of initiations in our life, but how have you dealt with it and how have you integrated it? And then the overarching quality that embodies all of this is, are you able to understand your wounding and how it plays out with your biases, your projections, and the most important one, your shadow? And this is where people either train in one specific skill set, so IFS or somatic experiencing, or they do dietas and only dietas, but you know, all of it is great. All of it in its form is great, but I believe you need such a multidisciplinary awareness, and you have to understand that, especially people that have ambition to hold sessions, even if it's a one day, you know, the overused word of set and setting, like, well, I'm over the words, but then at least people understand what I'm speaking about. It goes beyond putting on a candle. And having cards laid out, you know, those are nice elements to speak into things and to help transition something from the mundane to the sacred. So there's real intentionality and there is reverence for what you're doing. Now, a good acquaintance of mine, Mudu Bakwi, who was a speaker in one of my conferences, and it's actually also part of the Fundamentals of Space Holding course, including Beth, he said to the group, in a session, in a class, he said, do you realize that you're coming in on the merit of the relationship of the facilitator with the sacrament? And to me, that was the click where I went, you're coming in on the relationship. It's almost like, you know, I'm going to introduce Beth to my friend, let's call it Maria. And she's going to come in, and that relationship is going to be so much more intimate because I hyped up Maria to Beth and Beth to Maria. So, and because of the interconnectedness of the energetics, of the metaphysical, the transpersonal, so coming back to the shadow and how deep have you done your work is the capacity that you can allow people to go deep into their own work. And that just is, that's doing. This is why I'm saying it's a devotional practice. And it's a lifelong commitment. And it's a really hard commitment. There's a lot of sacrifices. And a lot of people, bless all of them, and I've had those clients myself, want a pretty fireplace with a circle and, you know, with nice feathers and a nice blanket and all drinking and the beautification, but don't understand that, you know, it's a shit show, you know, and that there needs to be real practice and real understanding of that. So I don't know if this fully answers your question, but then to go to because when we speak about psychedelics, there's always a paradox and a contradiction. So I'm a walking contradiction. I'm not gonna deny that in any shape or form. On the other hand, my teacher, grandmother medicine song, said to me once, once you've attained something, you have to give it away. Otherwise, you're stealing, because nothing is really yours. Now, in an age of, I do have an IP over the method I developed, present-centered leadership, it's a trademark and all of those things, But how I'm giving it away is by actually giving it away, and giving as much as I can. So I do believe that once you have figured out things, it's not for me to keep, it's for me to pass it on. Right. So, and why not start? So probably before I even launched Fundamentals of Space Holding and the Guardians of Transformation, which is a 9-day practicum retreat, I think I sat with the question for about 3 years before I launched this. What do I feel comfortable with? What can I give? What can I give? What is my position to give? What is not my position to give? I speak in the first person. What can I, like my teachers gave me something, but I can't teach their teachings. That's not how you are in sacred relationship, right? So, but I could speak into how things were for me. Okay. And it's like, there is a lot of nuances that you have to think about. So I came to the conclusion, we have to start somewhere. So I start with the basics. And not immediately wanting to create a 3-year program, which is going to be ridiculously expensive. Who can pay for that, really? Second, start small. So I started small with Fundamentals of Space Holding, a 5-week program where you get the baseline, and from there you have the structure to actually go into the in-person. Because this is the thing, I'm a guest teacher in programs that are 10 months, 12 months. So I'm not debunking their programs. I think there's a lot of value in them. However, I'm also standing for this truth, is that real learning in terms of space holding needs to be with nervous systems together. There is theory you can get online, but your nervous system is wired to learn much better with creativity and with other bodies and people witnessing you, because then you start to live the new. And secondly, the downloads and the real-time feedback that takes place. I just finished our first 9-day practitioner program. And, people are completely fried in a positive way, because it's so much, and they start to realize, holy shit, these are 17 to 18-hour days. This is a whole different ballgame, because you have to understand what you're stepping into. So to me, my passion is to, yes, online, let's make it affordable. Let's have a format, like even a format for people that could use it in the boardroom. This is a format for people that work with microdosing. This is a format that could work with people in an HR position. This is a format with an executive coach with luxury brands who is a client of mine who's doing this, knowing her higher self now and how to keep herself clean energetically, all of these things. Someone else who stepped out of the corporate environment, who wants to hold kirtan circles in the woods with fire. Like these skills can be applied to so many things. And if you want to go deeper in those skills, then you come in person, and then you come to the next in person. And that will automatically, with the medicine, so this is the last thing that I want to share about this answer giving you. The last thing, it's the medicine that initiates you. My responsibility is to be a companion on your journey. I'm a companion and a guide. I prepare you as best as I can. And then it's your sovereign choice, by the things the medicine teaches you, how you respond. And if you've done the practices, I have a client, she's been with me multiple years. We've just finished our journey. We don't know what's going to happen, because I'm truly guided by whatever shows up. But one of her assignments was to create prayer ties, 365 prayer ties. And each prayer needed to be for someone else. not for herself, for someone else. In this retreat, she brought the prayer ties and we made a fire offering. And the next day, she went into the ceremony, into the medicine, and she really saw the blessing she had received from doing that. And that fueled delight for her to meet parts of her that she wasn't daring to meet before. And I don't want to disclose too much because it's really a sacred moment for her. But this is where the relationship between the individual, the space holder or the guide, the facilitator, prepares you as best as they can. And then it's the medicine that initiates you. It will let you know that you've stepped over a threshold. If you're doubting if that's a threshold, if you got the message and you don't want to hear it, that's on you. But it will be pretty clear if you've been initiated into a gift or something has awakened within you, a capacity is awakened within you, where people suddenly can sing miraculously, and if that's not happening, there is another gift you're awakening. There's another purpose for you, So, yeah, it's a long answer, and I hope I'm answering it with generosity.
Yes. No, there were a lot of gems, and it's interesting. This came up recently, where you were saying, people who've maybe studied one or two particular modalities. Because I'm in a training that I've been in for a year, and I'm in the second year that has nothing to do with medicine, but it's deeply transformational work. I'm studying transformational neurolinguistic programming with a teacher who takes a different approach to it. He's been doing it for about 40 years, and there's a lot of overlap of the shamanic realm, which is great because I'm like, oh yeah, it's all one. It's all like a similar, different approach, but same place we're all going. But it's interesting when you have, let's say, IFS, because this actually came up recently, where it's like, okay, you have this one lens of seeing things and seeing like the way you've been trained to believe that's actually playing out. But there are other approaches, and then, even though I love IFS, I think it's great. There's different ways of looking at it. And there's other approaches where, it's not necessarily like that way or the highway. And every human being is different. Every experience is different. And what you said about coming in with like a truly non-judgmental space, both within yourself and with other in the relational field. And that's where I wonder if you say people have a hard time. I've witnessed this over the years where it's really interesting to watch people in facilitation space to see, how much are they in the clear channel or the, being of like, well, here's my map of the world that I'm projecting onto you. Yeah. And it's definitely a dance because, by the way, I found this with coaching, just even coaching something as simple and, seemingly harmless, but it's like, I think that's what really makes a good coach as well, is like coming in and truly like, it's like you have to step out of yourself and all and really be in this place of like, okay, am I seeing this client with fresh eyes from this deep place? And what you said about doing your own work, like the deep, dark shadow work, this is what I actually have seen over the years. Like the clients that really do this work are the ones that are able to actually show up in service better. And it tends to be, that's where their business takes off. I do think it's a huge part of it is like, how deep are you willing to go within yourself? Because if you're still struggling like with your own stuff, which, we're all human, we all have our stuff. Of course. Yeah. But, this is like where you're able to be of better service. And it's like the only way to truly learn is through the experience, the experiential embodied realm. And this is where I always find it interesting as well, a lot of these psychedelic training programs, and I've taught for some, and, I'm friends with people that run them, and they're all great. And, the experience is like, the best experience is your own, and like being in those actual physical spaces. I've been blessed where I've been apprenticing for many, many years, and I don't even call it apprenticing. It's like, I'm just in the space as a, servant, as in service to the space and the people in the space. But, to take like a year-long training where you're just learning and studying, but then you don't actually have your own, like you said, like initiated by the medicine itself, when you're not in the experience, I don't know, it's a whole different approach. And I'm not sure how helpful it is to not really have your own like relationship with the medicine itself, which, that quote was amazing. So Yeah, I'm curious, when you created this foundations of space holding, is it, for the intention that people can then, maybe see if this is the career path for them, or they're just curious about their own journey? I'm also wondering, like, do people come because they just want to understand like what goes on in the medicine space within themselves? Like, how many people are just there to learn more about themselves and not so much actually holding space for others?
Um, I think, to be really honest, I think because the wording everywhere is for me always very clear about what you're doing for yourself impacts what you do with others. I think people really understand that when they come in. But it's the few of the things that I've mapped out with people with questions that they might have is a feeling of overwhelm or inadequacy. Like when even if you've supported or assisted many, there's still, when are you ready to do your thing? Like, it's sometimes you just need to go into a specific container, or even just ask the questions, or be from a different place. The question that I think that I heard most was, I hold space, but I often don't know what I'm doing. Like, I can feel the thing, and there are people that are beautiful singers, they've done a lot of ceremonies, I've assisted in a lot of ceremonies, but they don't really know. And what I am good at, to say here, I know that I'm good at that. I am a pattern recognition. So I, at some point, am able to create an anatomy of a process. So I had a course called Living in Ceremony, and now the Fundamentals of Space Holding. There is an anatomy to things. And when people when I translate, but this is the anatomy, they go, oh, wait, this is what happens when this happens. Oh, so this is when I see this is what happens. Another one that I hear a lot is emotional burnout and boundary issues. That's another pain point that I hear a lot. So, and that comes in so many different forms. It's like taking people's energy, the way they feel, the amount of facilitators that I hear on the grapevine that, through other people or directly to me, ask me, how come am I, for the 3 to 4 days after when facilitation, I'm in bed, I'm exhausted, I'm drained, I'm overwhelmed, I'm emotionally not available. You should be tired if you've done it. That's really normal. But if you're that depleted, there's other things happening too. First of all, the energetic is not clean enough. So the group isn't being cleaned enough. The leading of so there's many layers. So there's an energetic component to it. And of course, a container, a structural component. Just the simplicity. Let me give you an example. If you don't have a really clear structure on how the day is going to unfold, all our nervous systems freak out. You need to know
want to be in there. Oh my God. No.
That's her, So it's like taking other people's energy, feeling drained. I know some really prominent people that are really prominent therapists who work at a really good high level, who really have struggling energetically, and they don't understand it because they haven't trained in that way, right? So that's another one. Another one that I hear a lot is kind of a lack of confidence. And I also hear a lot on, I'm not good enough. I'm not ready to guide others. So there's an inner authority question around that. And, not that after 5 weeks you will know that you need to guide people or not. I'm not claiming that. Listen, I hope that anybody who is willing to hold space in the broadest sense, that you're a few times a year, you have a really critical voice asking, should I still be doing this? Man. I have this all the time. Yeah. I think it's really healthy.
Yep. I'm constantly, you know what? It's funny. At least a few times a year, I'm constantly asking myself, like, do I need to be doing this? Is this for me? Does this still align?
Yeah.
Like, why am I going to sit with this medicine? Why am I going to help hold the space? Like, what is the deep intention?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's really important for everybody to do that check constantly. And I'm sure you've seen it. I've had numerous clients come to me saying, who've been holding spaces for, a few years, and they're like, oh, I'm actually getting burnt out. I don't think this is for me. And then I do usually, I agree. There's usually a deeper issue running beneath that, often. Not always. I mean, sometimes it's truly like someone tries it out for a few years and they're like, you know what? This isn't what it's all cracked up to be.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's okay too, Another thing is what I've also heard a lot is, and I think this is a really, really good one, is I don't know what I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And you feel it, it's like you feel drawn to a specific person with a specific experience with my slightly different lens, or a lens that you go like, wow, I feel seen, I recognize myself in this person. So what I have a lot of my clients is that there is a very, very diverse offering online, but there is a rarity in actually saying this is a purpose, this is a process, a transpersonal process of purpose and meaning, aka spiritual, right? And I put it really out there. And a lot of people in their programs are not naming it in there. They're speaking about neuroscience, great. Trauma-informed, great. But making a claim on the actual process of the initiatrix, let me just say it like this, and I'm not talking about the gender of the feminine, but the qualities of the feminine, which is a rebirthing quality, an initiation quality. And I just feel that a lot of people feel drawn to people that represent that viewpoint and speak out about it. And I do that. So sometimes it's also coming into a community that you feel seen in. That's why I also do a lot of the things that I did, because I did not have the views. I did not have the people that I could turn back on and go like, oh, how are they doing? One person along the way that I'd met is Trisha Eastman when I just started, and I saw a talk from her at the Alchemy Kitchen.
Alchemist Kitchen?
Alchemist Kitchen.
I was there at that talk. This was like eons ago. That's when I first met her. Yeah.
Yeah.
She was like the first person that would talk publicly like that big about 5-MeO.
Exactly, about 5-MeO, but she was talking about it from the feminine voice.
Yeah.
And from as an empath,
yeah.
and telling people, I'm an empath, I have these skills. And I was like, whoa, wait, I'm listening to me. And it was just such a warm, and now we have a friendship and everything. So I feel really blessed. But at that time, it was like a hug on my heart, because I felt so alone in a specific oriented field. And I was like, oh, wait, I'm not alone. So community, because it's an overused word, community. So I wanted to give it a bit more context. What I mean with that is just you feel that your values and your belief system are in resonance with that. So therefore, you'll always get the permission, the learning. And what I think is the most valuable thing is the ability to ask questions. Fundamentals of Space Holding is a very affordable course. You can pay in massive installments, and you have access to people directly to ask questions and be engaged with them live, which normally you need to buy a mentorship for one-on-one with, right? So it's also about accessibility for as many people as possible in that sense. So there is a responsibility as creators like you and me to create things for different levels of income and investment capacity. But also, we also need to pay our mortgages and our things. And well, now I don't have a house, so I don't even know what I'm talking about mortgages for. But we also have a responsibility in a business to run and real life problems. I just had a call this morning with a friend, and I'm going to be super vulnerable here. And I called her up, and she's quite prominent in the field. And I was like, I just need a sister talk. And I was like, I'm done adulting. I'm done adulting for a moment. Just launched a massive program. I come back and I hear about my huge tax return I need to pay back. And, and it just like real life things, and then you're pretty, then it's pretty challenging, because officially I, as, a medicine carrier and a companion of the sacrament, what I would need is to now have 30 days of solitude. Because I'm not just a business owner and entrepreneur, I'm carrying deep medicine. I need my practices and my thing, but no. You're going back to
Pay
society
your taxes.
and you're going to pay your taxes and you're going to figure out some things.
Oh my God. I was just talking to my friend about, I've said this for years. I'm like, it's like we need a retreat from retreats. Like we need to have a integration center that's on the way. That's like 2 weeks when you, like where you ease back into society. And it's like, ugh, God, who can do that? You know,
Actually, there's in different traditions, from Middle Eastern traditions to African traditions, and even I know in Mexico, from different perspectives, but they have this the feminine integration time, which is 40 days. And it's really interesting that different traditions have a 40-day window to integrate or come back into their community. There's, I think, even with giving, some women in some traditions give after giving birth, they have a 40-day rest period, and the baby doesn't leave them. It's like it's like, that's what I'm saying. But I don't know how we do that, because the cost from venues. But what we actually need is to go do gardening and take care of our bees, like what you do. Have beehives, right? And make our own food for a moment and be in a community. And okay, yeah.
Yeah, if I didn't have the garden, I don't know how I would ever integrate. I'm actually like, I was like, oh, what day is it today? I can't wait. It's supposed to rain the next couple of days, and then it's going to be back in. But yeah, you mentioned something. It's so interesting when you mention, like space holders with, which this is normal, there's no shaming here, but like people not feeling confident. That's a tough one for me, because I've been in spaces where I've witnessed people that are, fumbly a little bit. And I have to say, as someone who sits in that, like I've sat in it once, and I genuinely was like, wow, I wish I wasn't in here. It's tough. I personally wouldn't sit with someone who wasn't confident, or at least wasn't holding the energy of some kind of confidence, because it starts to feel very unsafe. And that's where it is kind of this, like, it's a fine line. There's only been 2 people ever that I've worked with where, one person I chose not to work with. I gave them their money back, and I said, I don't want to work with you as a client, because they were just so far off of my map when it came to values within the medicine space that I couldn't, it was also, it's a long story, the way the person came in with like utter disrespect. And then another person who, had done a 5-MeO training in like a weekend and was like, okay, I want to serve. And I was like, I'm not the one to tell you this, but maybe you should take it day by day before you just go all in serving people. And I'm wondering, do you ever have to like basically tell someone like, maybe you're not ready, or maybe, get a little more, experience, apprenticeship, or, space holding time in person? I mean, have you ever had someone say like, oh, I just went through your 5-week training and now I want to serve, DMT to my whole community? Like, does this ever happen? And it's like, how do we watch our projections, right? Like, I'm like, okay, who am I to say what's right or wrong or good or bad? And so I try to like really hold a neutral space around it. But I wonder how often people who are running trainings have to do that.
So the moment someone comes into a mentorship or a practicum retreat, and they say that without me feeling that they are safe yet, I have the responsibility to say something. And because, probably 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I really struggled with this, but I've built a different relationship with my own practices and my belief systems and the medicine in that way. And it's been pretty clear. I've been really scolded that I have to take responsibility to speak my truth with all consequences. Because then again, it's people are coming in on the merit that I have with the truth, with the medicine. So if I'm not willing to sit in the uncomfortable in that truth, I'm not speaking, I'm not embodied in that way. So because there is multiple things, sometimes you're doing someone a favor, by saying, hey, your calling feels good, intention, and I get that. But from my perspective, I would go here, here, and here, and here first. Reconsider this over that, And you do that with generosity. You don't just scold someone. You don't just put them down. You uplift where you meet the person where they're at, which is the basics of space holding. You need to see who is in front of you and uplift the gifts and the talents, the golden shadow, basically, help them see that golden shadow and that there are multiple ways to do it and that it's okay to take your time to unpack and build a relationship with and build a relationship over time with the medicine yourself first and how to go about it. So it really depends on the person that is in front of me and what's happening. So I have to speak my truth, but the way I do it is with generosity and it is with kindness. And it is because at the end of the day, the people are coming in because they feel a calling to make a change. And they feel a calling, maybe even it's wired by their ego. Who cares? At least they're wanting to make a difference and be transformation or stepping into servant leadership. And I think that part can be amplified, but then also saying these are the risks. Now, this is why it's important to come to in-person experiences over a duration of time so you really feel what you don't know. Because that will humble the shit out of you. I don't have to say anything. It will humble the, how many times I've and this is why we're both sharing. I'm now more careful than I was in the beginning because I've been humbled the shit out of situations where things can go very different. And I go wow, these situations, I don't know how we managed ourselves with it. There was a divine intervention. I had a great team. Nobody was ever at risk with life or death in my container, so I'm not alluding to that. But the fact is, if I put this individual in that setting, they would not be able to cope. And it's almost you have to bring that awareness across. And then another thing, and this is a really practical, and this is from my entrepreneurial side. You have to understand that if someone did a training and they go around, I did a training with Natasha and now I'm serving. Yeah. What that implies, first of all, energetically.
Yeah.
And secondly, this is what it is. I have to be very clear. I don't think you should do this. So if they do say I've done a training there and it comes back to me, I've been really clear about that you should not be serving. Therefore, you cannot use my name because I'm not vouching for that work. So there is a practical business
that's
aspect.
What I always think about.
There is a protection mechanism. But to me, that's probably the latter of my concerns. The most important one is the fact that someone can do real harm, even with all the good intentions. I did a short derailing to another topic, but I did a talk at a conference called Breaking Convention, which is the biggest longest standing multidisciplinary conference in Europe, in the UK. And I had a topic with a panel. So I was managing and hosting that panel, The Dark Side of Psychedelic Healing. And my personal keynote, I chose to speak into, chosen by the medicine, but now what? So there are some individual cases, but I chose to speak into the actual psychedelic space and different businesses and different structures of businesses and how, in the nitty gritty in a space itself, it is not clean. 9 out of 10 times, there's a lot of things that are going on. And I don't want to speak from a mountaintop or an ivory tower and saying, oh, that isn't it. I've been part of problems too. I'm not saying I haven't. But after so many years, you see how processes work. You see how individuals go way too fast. You see that psychedelics have become a startup. A lot of them have become startups. And with stakeholders and structures that are not fitting the medicine space. I've had personally quite some people wanting to invest or that I could become bigger or more resourced financially. And I always said no because I knew, and I made a promise when I started, and I never wanted to be so dependent on the medicine that I couldn't make a choice to stop. Because that's how complex the space is and and the responsibility. So when you look at those kind of startup structures, that is dependent on specific stakeholders, different interests, different relational interests, maybe even to pharmaceutical interests, maybe different programs wanting to have an IP on specific formats. Like, it's all agenda based. And a lot of the people are in senior positions with junior experience in business, let alone in psychedelics. So you have two variables of lack of experience in one container. So then again, it doesn't mean that these individuals aren't well-intentioned or not fun people, or I know them, I've worked with them, for some of them, I have a good relationship with some of them, but that's also just what the truth is of where we are. So we don't need more inexperienced people. We need more mature people who are actually saying, I'm not going to serve this medicine, but I'll help solve this problem, I'll help this part. I'll do this part. That's what we need, that honesty. So I think we only can call that in if we represented ourselves.
Yeah.
So lengthy answer again.
No, it's funny because I've talked to certain friends about this over the years about I know very few facilitators and people who hold ceremonies whose primary income, is serving medicine, or even honestly, even people that work as psychedelic therapists. And there is, because to me, there is something, I mean, again, this is like maybe more my value system, where it's like, to make your life dependent on having to serve medicine, meaning like your only financials come from only serving medicine, to me, this is where I question, like, how muddy does that energy get? Because I've actually had certain people, this has actually happened to me a lot over the years, I've had people really like push medicine, like, hey, do you want to come to this retreat, because there's like 4 spots left and we really need to fill it. And it's like, but this is medicine. And, it's like and it's a weird thing, because it's like, yes, we can do marketing and share about it and have people like know about it to then come. But I've actually had people like full on like come to me and trying to get me to come. And I guess to each their own, but like even the air of desperation where I've had people do kind of like poaching, like, oh, hey, I knew someone that was like, needed more clients because he needed to pay the bills and he serves mushrooms. And it was like, oh, hey, why don't you come do a session with me and see how you like it? And it was like, I don't know. I've really struggled with like, should this just be treated like any other business? Because that's kind of how it goes in the business world. It's like someone's business took a dip and they need money. They need to go market it. I don't know. And I've really struggled with this, and I've try to figure out like what's the right way to be in the right relationship where it's also clean energy,
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, it's knowing how to walk all of it with a lot of care, and also being willing to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Like that's also just what it is. Nobody's going to do it perfectly. I haven't done it perfectly. Like I said, if I look at certain things from me 10 years ago, I wouldn't do it that way anymore. So there is a change, and yeah, you need to tell people that you're here, right? You need to tell them that you're here and what you have to offer. But I think the nuance and the way to do it and all of that is, it's a very broad education.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, Natasha, tell people a little bit more about the upcoming program you have, and then also anything else that you're up to in the next, year, like any plans, anything new. I know you offer a lot of different retreats, this training. Yeah.
Yeah. So the retreats are with, we're now in, what month are we? May 2025, right? So we have the only 2 retreats that are still able to be booked is one 5-MeO and one psilocybin. 5-MeO is in Portugal and psilocybin is in the Netherlands, with truffles. And then our next 9-day retreat is in 2026. I only do 1 9-day a year. It's really intense work. I really go all in. Like I said, I just finished one, and I'm going to build on each other. So it's like I'm taking my time to build module on module on module. And the space informs what it needs. So how I work is, yes, I have a format. I know what the deliverables need to be from a business aspect, but I am very comfortable in surrendering to the group process of what is needed, and keeping a structure 100% in place. So our 9-day Guardians of Transformation is next year, 2026, in May. So that's exciting. And then the Fundamentals of Space Holding, which is our 5-week online program. We have, it's a self-paced program, but we have live classes of 2 hours every week, so 120 minutes every week, as really a practice space. So basically, you'll be able to navigate through all of the content. It's 5 weeks, 5 modules. We go really, really deep, and there is a lot of tools. So there is actually, everything has theory and everything has practice. And the different modules, you can check that all out on I'm not going to name all the modules because people can read up on that, because I'm just reciting what's on the website, and that's a bit lame. Right.
And we'll have the link right here in the show notes. So
yeah, exactly. So you can check that. And we're starting with the live classes July 4th. The course starts again, and if you're watching this at another time, you can still enroll. But then it's 100% self-paced. So what I'm doing is once a year, I'm adding with live classes, and the rest of the year people can join with just doing the self-paced version, because it's a lot of people that are really different time zones, and you know how that goes. Some people really like to do the things in their own time, and some people really like the live classes. So, but what I really
join the live classes, because I'll be there.
That's really the thing is, that's what I said. That's really where you have an opportunity, because there is real depth that is shared and real practice. Because what I did in the previous live classes was really answer questions that are alive in the moment for people to come with. So sometimes we would even go off topic of the module because that's what came up and was alive. And I love that. Like, that's the stuff I can't think about, like throw things at me and I'm like, oh, I don't know this. Let me get back to you, So that's the Fundamentals of Space Holding. And this is what I'm gearing up for. This is what I'm really excited about. So yeah. And the rest, I have a package where I work with people with mentorship, which they have the Fundamentals of Space Holding, one-on-one mentorship, and then a 9-day practicum, which is a 1-year full program with me. And that leans more into the apprenticeship model, right? So that's a little bit, but this is really for people who are really into space holding, really want to go deep with it. And I only have 3 spots at a time, because I create everything per person. So it isn't a format you're coming into. It's like individual, because everybody comes in with different questions and different goals, right? So everything is created for the individual, for the mentee. But anybody can join the Fundamentals of Space Holding. There's a special price, and there is also installment plans. I think it's about 5 installment plans of $100 and something. So yeah, so it's really good. It's really good.
Great.
Yeah. That's me. That's
this is
my
awesome.
little sales pitch, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we'll have the link below, and I highly recommend you join in this new cohort, because it's going to be live and in community, and get
and
your
you're going to
questions
be there.
answered. Yeah, and I'll be there.
Yeah, we chose a topic and everything, so we're good.
Yeah, so we'll have it right here in the show notes. And Natasha, it was so good to have you here. I could totally jam forever, but I have another call coming up.
Of course.
It's always so insightful for me to stop and reflect as well, and be like, oh yeah, it's like you said, this world is just moving on to the next thing, moving so fast, and to have this space to stop and reflect and like really see, like, okay, how do we keep going in this new field of everybody wanting to be a space holder and really get it right. And it's, you know, I always look at the larger picture of like the collective healing, you know, and so there is something
100%.
here. Yeah. And I really encourage people to get some good guidance. I cannot recommend Natasha enough. There's very few people out there I do recommend. So take it from me. You know, I'm actually excited because I'm like, well, I should really do this as well, along with all my other training.
I've been wanting you to come to me in Portugal.
I know.
I almost tricked her this last winter to come to me.
No.
I was like, come.
I want to come. I know, if I wasn't moving my mom's entire life from North Carolina to California, which is over now, but yes, maybe this year. It's funny because I have a trip I want to. I have a planned trip that I think I'm taking in the fall, late fall, and I was like, yeah, maybe I'll stop through Europe for a while.
Yeah. I mean, you know where I'm at. We can always coordinate. So let's make it happen.
Beautiful. I love Portugal. I love Portugal so much. Oh, I have a friend that just moved. She's Portuguese and just moved back there. I'm like, ooh. So I actually mentioned you. I was like, oh, you should link up with my friend. Go on one of her retreats. Well, thank you for being here. And thanks everybody for tuning in. Be sure to check out the links below. And yes, so good to see you, Natasha. Thanks for being here.